All right. Okay. I played over 100 games in 2025. Did I complete them all? No. Did I get enough into them to get a good sense of them? Sure. Yeah. We'll go with that. Hi, I'm Matt Linder, and welcome to my channel where we do deep dives on games, music, film, TV, anything pop culture. All right. So this is going to be a super rough video. It's going to be a lot of my rambling thoughts of the year in gaming for me. And I just wanted to share games I enjoyed that maybe you didn't hear of this year that you want to check out. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just a rando on the internet, so you can take my opinion or leave it. But these are some cool gaming experiences that I had this year. But first, I want to get some things out of the way. Did I play Silksong? Of course I did. Did I play Clear Obscure Expedition 33? Yes, I did. Am I all the way done with? No. Am I done with Silksong? No. But I'm making my way through them, and they are great games. They deserve to be nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards, and you should definitely pick them up. But there's already tons of press coverage about those games. You have not played them yet. Please do get them and try them out. I think you'll really, really love them. Silksong is a beast. It is very difficult. Much more difficult of a game than I am regularly playing. You may also be wondering, hey, Matt, where is Hades 2? Yeah, I haven't gotten through the first game yet. And I feel like I need to get through that before getting into Hades 2. But I've heard incredible things from friends of mine that are playing it, and I will eventually play it. I will likely be blown away by it like everyone else is. Lastly, I play games on PC. I don't have any current consoles. I was a console gamer forever, all the way back to the NES. Mostly Nintendo systems, Xbox. I never had any PlayStation systems, but I play games on PC, so I do not have a PS5. I do not have a Switch 2. Xbox games, I have played some through Game Pass. What you won't see on this list are exclusives to PS5 or Nintendo Switch. So you won't see Donkey Kong Bonanza or Death Stranding 2, even though I cannot wait until Death Stranding 2 is ported over to PC, because Death Stranding is in my top 5 games of all time. So I am itching to play it. Last thing, I am terrible at identifying when something is a spoiler in a game, and I'm not particularly averse to spoilers at all. It doesn't take away from my gaming experience. So this is your fair warning that I will likely spoil things all over this video, and I'm sorry. So if it's a game you haven't played through yet and there's a likelihood of spoilers, you might just want to skip over that section of the game. All right, let's get into it. I said I wasn't going to cover games that got lots of press, but I figured I would just share up front the headline of this video that my favorite game of the year is Blueprints. And there's many, many reasons for that, but I love a good game that doesn't give you information. There's lots of puzzle solving. There's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of deep lore going on, and it doesn't really explain much. And you just have to go around. You have to find things to unlock new areas, to unlock new things, and make more discoveries. And I love that sort of game. And that's why Myst is one of my favorite games of all time, because it was one of the, first games that really did that, just dropped you into this strange, bizarre world, and you had to go around, figure out what to do, had to solve puzzles. And Blueprints absolutely scratches that itch for me. The random number generator, I know, did a lot of people dirty. It did me dirty. It took me 40 hours before I got to room 46. But when I got to room 46, I was so excited. All right, let me show you. I was playing Blueprints. Let me grab my controller. So I was playing it, and I finally got to room 46. And as I was getting into the room, I was shaking with excitement like this. And I was so excited. And I was like, oh my God, I finally did this. And I haven't had that much excitement about getting to a game ending in a very, very long time. And it was such a great experience. I figured we'd get into the really heavy stuff with these very heavy emotional games first. And the first game, I want to warn you, does have discussions of CSA. And if that's something that's triggering for you, please skip ahead to the next part of the video that covers the next games. All right, let's get into these emotional games. Wednesdays is a collaboration of a number of devs who worked on a number of very narrative-focused games, a lot of visual novel elements, but it also has a bit of building a theme park game within it. And through that building of a game part, you are unlocking these memories from your past and going through those memories that are very trauma-filled memories of experiencing CSA from someone who was a bit older than you. It is an emotionally very challenging game to get through, especially if you're someone who had experienced CSA, which I am someone who has. I had to stop the game a number of times and take breaks from it for days before I can continue and go back to it. They handled everything so well, and in being very thoughtful to victims of CSA and exploring things from the victim's experience. If you ever played the game Florence and the way that game handled interactivity, and Roger has a similar approach. The way that you interact with items on the screen marry in very nicely with the story that it is trying to tell. In this story, you think it's headed in one direction, but it goes in a completely different, unexpected direction. And it's a story that is a story of loss, but it's also a story that doesn't stop there, and it ends on a lot of grace and hope. Now, you'd think that this game that's basically a walking simulator where you're going around with your key fob and trying to locate your car through the maze of these cars would not be that interesting of a game and be not very emotional. But while you're doing this in these kind of like dreamlike environments of these parking lots, you are also having a conversation with your therapist, and there's different routes you can go with a conversation, and it gets into some deep things about your character and what they are going through mentally and emotionally. So the premise of this game is very simple. You are practicing to light up this huge bowl. Think like a huge bowl that you'd have in Roman or Greek times that you would have like an eternal flame in or something like that. And you basically have a fiery arrow that you're shooting off from this balcony, and you're practicing each day to do that. But at the same time, every day in the evening, people are coming by and they're asking you to grant their wish request that will be granted once you reach that bowl on the festival day. So you have these really intense personal stories that people share. They want burdens lifted. And sometimes it's funny things that they want. They're just like, I want this toy or whatever, or I want this thing, or I want my neighbor to stop annoying me. But there's a lot of really personal, touching stories. And then you get to decide if you want to grant that wish to them or not. And then at the end, when you have that one moment to shoot off the arrow, and the ending, whew, it's gonna hit you hard. The devs describe this game as a Tamagotchi-like experience where you are taking care of a woman in her 20s who is suffering from some sort of depression and is feeling unmotivated. And each day you do little tiny tasks to get yourself more and more motivated so that you can build up enough energy and enough courage to be able to start working on making music again. Every once in a while, your mother will stop by and your mom is trying to encourage you. to continue to do things like work on music, and she provides you food at times so you can build up that energy. And it's a really interesting kind of managing your character experience, but also at the same time giving you a real feel of what it is like to be depressed and what it can take to get out of that depression. Indonesian game devs, I feel like, are really slept on because they have some of the best emotional narrative games out there, and this game is no different. It is basically a game that works like Papers, Please, and you have increasingly complex requirements in order for these vehicles to go through a toll booth. And the twist here is that you are a pregnant mother and you need to earn the money so that you can get the medicine you need to keep your unborn baby healthy, as well as getting the money to pay for the hospital bill because you've been the student protesters, and then also keep track of your own health with the child. And it can be very complex and very difficult. It's a pretty rare kind of story that you don't see in a lot of games where you play as a pregnant mother and all the fears and the worries you'd have as a pregnant mother in the midst of political turmoil in a country, which makes for an interesting twist on that classic Papers, Please formula. Mind Diver is a game that is semi-autobiographical based on the dev's experience, and they did really cool 3D scans to get the characters and the images of the environments into the game. And so it has this real otherworldly quality. And the main gameplay is basically swim around to these different memories inside a person's brain and trying to restore certain memories so that you can figure out what happened in the story. It's a beautiful, heartbreaking story, but the gameplay and the puzzles make it even more interesting. Atuel is a river in Argentina, and in this game, you are flowing along, flying along, walking along the river as you hear stories from indigenous folks who live in the area and talk about the importance of the river to their culture, to their livelihood, and how climate change are impacting those things. So it's kind of like walking through this magical realism environment while listening to an audio documentary. Dispolete is a slice of life autobiographical game about what it was like growing up as a child in 2001 in Ecuador and seeing the Ecuadorian team reach the World Cup. And you get to have a lot of interactions with other children who are your classmates, and you get to see a lot of those games and how your life at that time is all centered around soccer. It is a beautiful narrative game that uncovers a very specific moment in history, but tells a very personal tale of childhood and wonder and possibility. Consumi has been worked on for a decade, and it tells a very personal story about disordered eating and at the same time trying to maintain relationships with friends and boyfriends and family and balance school. And it gets really hectic at times as you're trying to balance all those things and not fail your day, not fail your week. But that sort of stress really communicates well the themes of the game when it comes to disordered eating and trying to meet up to all these expectations. Keep Driving is something that really captured my attention because in a lot of ways, it reminded me of when I was in a band in the early 2000s. I was going on the road a lot to play shows into various parts of Northern California, and this game hit that sort of nostalgia for me big time. Also, it's about managing your resources in order to get to basically a Warped Tour style show and festival. That sort of game is not typically something that I play, but this really opened my eyes into how that can be fun, managing your resources in order to get through this story. And I think it really helped that I had a personal connection to this type of story, and that really led me to a bunch of other management games I played this year. In that same vein, Promise Mascot Agency, which is a game from the same devs as Paradise Killer. If you haven't played that game, that is a game that you should also check out. It's amazing. And this one is just as good. It's a different premise. You basically are managing a mascot agency in a small rural Japanese town, and you are building up your roster of mascots so that they can do different tasks and events around town to help the community out. It is very fun. It's very silly, and the managing of the mascots and the battles are really interesting. The first Citizen Sleeper was my favorite game of 2022, and Citizen Sleeper 2 takes that same formula and expands it, makes the world larger. You can go beyond the rig that you are working on, and you can work at other places. You can interact with interesting characters. If you like TTRPGs, visual novels, and sci-fi, then this is a game that you'll definitely want to check out. Now, a game like The Alters is not one that I would typically go for. The sci-fi environment is cool and something I would like, but survival and base building are not games that I typically like. But this one is interesting, I think, because of the environment, because the tasks to survival are more interesting than other survival games that I have tried. And also the narrative of you are copying yourself and seeing other versions of yourself that could have been if you had taken different routes in your history. And that's a unique premise and a unique environment for this type of survival game, and it looks fantastic. I know most of the core gameplay, quote unquote gameplay in Dispatch is watching it like an animated series. You can do some quick time events if you want to, but you don't have to. But the main gameplay part is sending out superheroes on different superhero tasks as you're managing them through a call center. I completely sucked at it the entire time. And based on that you can get different endings at the end of the 8 episodes of the game. So I highly recommend it, at least for watching the animated sequences. It's fantastic. Great writing, great voice act. And then the management parts, if you suck at them, you can still get through the game. Tower defense or real-time strategy games are not games that ever attracted me, but this game, Dawn Folk, is different as it strips everything back to very simplistic things where you're basically working in tiles, and each tiles you can add different resources, build different buildings, and then you can fight the different things that come towards you. And there's a bit of narrative too that makes it interesting too, but it is a very addictive game because of that simplicity, I think, and makes it very, very accessible and makes it fun for folks like me who are not into those types of games normally. Another style game that I never thought I would get into are cozy games, and I got into them hard this year. Starting off with Wanderstop, I could not get enough of this game. Basically, it follows a warrior that you would expect to see in like a hack and slash game or an action RPG. And where the subversion comes within this game is that she is asked to slow down. She is stuck in this grove at this tea shop, and she has to make various types of teas for customers. So the cozy is the subversion to the like action RPG. And it's a wonderful story. And at the end, I teared up because I didn't want to leave this world because it was so, so lovely. Idle games are not really my thing, but Tower Wizard is different. I think the nostalgia of the 4-color Game Boy style graphics, but then it has a bunch of different areas you can click on and you can add resources to, or you can just let it run and do its thing. And it's just a wonderfully delightful idle game in so many ways. Now, I really don't play dating simulators, and Date Everything is a game that's a dating simulator, but there's a big twist on it, is that you're in your house, you can move around in the house, and you can basically scan things with these glasses that you have to look at different objects, and they become humanized and they speak to you, and you can try to romance them, you can try to become friends with them, you can become enemies with them, frenemies even. There's over 100 different objects in the house that you can romance. And I think that's a really interesting premise for a game, but also the writing is very sharp and very, very funny. If you're a big fan of the game Journey, I think Hurtling is a game that you will like also, because it has a similar gameplay where you are trying to get up to the top of this mountain. In addition to just taking yourself up the mountain, you are herding these yak-like creatures up to the top of the mountain. So you have to kind of manage keeping them all together. And it's a fun, exhilarating ride, but also a very calming, fun game. I found myself falling in love with co-op games this year. And one of those co-op games is Co-op Kaiju Horror Cooking. And this comes from the dev Strange Scaffold, whose games I absolutely love and adore because they're so weird and bizarre, and they have such interesting game mechanics and stories and graphics. And this one is very much in a PS1 style environment, and you basically work with others to do a dungeon crawl, to gain the ingredients, to cook outside and launch at kaiju so that they don't destroy the world. And it's a super fun premise, and it's a super fun game. Mage Arena is very interesting because how you attack others in the game is by using your voice. You say fireball, ice, different spells using different words, and that's how you attack others. So it's a fun twist on kind of like an arena shooter, but instead of using a controller or a keyboard to shoot at others, you are using your voice to do spells at others and to attack them. Warm Monkey is a game where you are a monkey in a tropical environment and you are basically trying to survive. And how you survive is that you get into these little pools of water that are all over the place, and that keeps you cool. And you can play this with other players and you can get a lot further than you can get on your own. It is really fun in co-op as you try to strategize together of where you're going to go next in order to find more water to keep yourself cool. I like a lot of unnerving games, but Children of Clay is a very short experience, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, where you get this basically clay idol and you are uncovering the secrets of it, and you can explore around the room that you're in a bit too, but it's mostly focused on exploring the secrets of this idol and figuring out what this idol does. And it's a interesting, quick, disturbing experience. Every morning in Dead Letter Department, you wake up, you go down all these hallways, and you go to this room that's all locked up. You have a computer screen, and through there, you're sorting through mail, looking at the addresses in there and fixing it and figuring out where these pieces of mail should go. But at the same time, it is a completely disturbing environment that you're in, and the letters get increasingly weird, and there's weird glitchy things that happen on your computer, and it's really dark in the best way possible. Eclipsium is really cool because it is highly pixelated 3D environment that looks impressionistic, but as you get closer to the object, things become clearer in focus. And it's mostly a walking sim where you go through this dark, creepy environments, and there are some puzzle solving elements, but mainly it's the environments that just look incredibly cool, and moving through that sort of environment is a really awesome and interesting experience. Kaput Mortem, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, is like a standard fare PS1 style type horror game in first person, and you explore around this environment and uncover all these secrets and do all these puzzles, and there's some enemies and everything like that. But what makes the game different and interesting and unique is the controls. So the controls in this game are weird, but that's part of the fun of it. Let me grab my controller here. Okay, so you got our controller here, right? And then you got your left stick to move around, right? And usually you'd have your right stick to look around. But in this game, you're actually using the triggers to look right and left. And then you are doing the shoulder buttons to look up and down. And then there's some other controls where you have A to select your weapon, but then you have to press the select button to cycle through your weapons. It's not the D-pad at all to cycle through. So they purposely made it very obtuse, but that's part of the fun and part of the challenge of the game. It makes it a very unique tactile experience. If you've been looking for that same experience of GoldenEye 007 on the Nintendo 64, then I think Metal Garden will scratch that itch, because everything is very grayed out. It's very brutalist architecture everywhere, and it controls kind of similarly, but not in a bad way. It's definitely more modern controls, but it definitely has kind of that looser kind of controls that are not so accurate. The overall, just the feel, the vibe of the game feels very much like this is a successor to GoldenEye. In a Dream Barbecue is a free game, and it's wild that it's free because the animation on this game is insane. There's so many different styles when it comes to the characters, comes to the environments, comes to the special effects, as well as voice acting. There's incredible voice acting in multiple different languages, mind you, and all this is free. And it's just the first chapter of a larger game that is yet to come. Suspect that the other portions will be paid, but that has this much quality in a free game is incredible. Now, trying to explain what you do in the game is kind of impossible. You just kind of have to experience it for yourself. It's basically walking around, solving puzzles, almost kind of like a point and click, but you're walking around in the environment in first person and interacting with different bizarre characters. And I just go into it, try it out. It's very bizarre and weird. Nubby's Number Factory is something that feels like it was a game that was included with Windows 98 and it was just discovered now. It has that weird, bizarre energy of like Winamp skins and bizarre characters. And basically it's like Peggle, but it's a roguelike and you get different weird powers, and it's just very addictive and very fun in the same way that Balatro is. Speaking of Balatro, Slots and Daggers is a slot machine game. You pull the thing, you get different things that come up, shields, swords, different potions, powers, and you are using that then to try to defeat these monsters. And after each monster, you can upgrade your stuff based on how much coins that you earn during the round. It's like making a slot machine and a dungeon crawler mixed together. Dead Finger Dice, the premise of it is you are basically on this yacht with these billionaires and you are playing Yahtzee with them until the death. And you have to bet your own fingers or the fingers of others in order to win this Yahtzee game. If you lose a round or you don't have enough, you have to cut off your own fingers. And the music in this game is incredible, and I often found myself just grooving along to the music while I was playing this Yahtzee-style horror game. On the topic of music, there's this game, Look Mom No Computer, with basically a twin-stick shooter, dungeon crawler type game. But what makes it different and unique, the environment you go in, you're basically like going into computers and you're defeating the enemies in there. But the most unique thing about it is that to get more powers for your guns or different weapons is that you are collecting these analog synth pedals. And then you can go and play with those synth pedals and make different types of music, which is almost more fun than the dungeon crawling is. And you could just spend hours and hours playing with those pedals. And the dungeon crawling feels more like, oh, this is the task to get more pedals so I can play around more with those pedals. Miro's environments are huge and expansive, and they are randomly generated, and you can make it look very, very pixelated and impressionistic, or you can have it look very realistic. And you go in these environments, you collect different items, you're collecting data to find out more of the mystery of what's happening in this part of this galaxy and these different quadrants. So you're exploring, you're uncovering the story, and you're going on these randomized worlds, these beautifully pixelated worlds that you get to explore in. That is just such a vibe. The Dark Queen of Mothalmi is where you are playing as the final boss in the game. And this is a very short game, maybe an hour at tops, but it is interesting twists as you see this hero come back and back and back and try to defeat you, and you just keep on easily defeating them over and over again. But you'll see the game gets more interesting as you get closer to the end. The New Flesh is a free-to-play interactive music video where you are walking through these David Lynchian environments, talking to this very strange character, solving puzzles, and all at the same time you hear the music from the band who created this game. And their music is very alt, very grunge, very hard rock, and it's very fitting for these creepy, unnerving environments that you are walking through. Sono Kuni is another game made by a group, and this time it's a hip-hop group out of Japan, and they made basically a Hotline Miami-style game, but instead of shooting guns, you have a sword that you swirl around and you attack enemies with in each room, and it is super, super fun. If you grew up in the 80s, early 90s having cable TV, Blippo Plus is the game that you probably want to experience because it definitely replicates the experience of watching cable late in the night. You have basically a scrolling screen with all the programs and you can choose the different channels. That's about it when it comes to the gameplay, is just selecting the different channels and then watching the different, very interesting, almost cable access type shows on this game. I played it by streaming it onto my phone at night to replicate that experience of staying up late and watching cable TV back in those days. And it was a excellent experience. And each of the different shows on the channel are absolutely hilarious. Brew and Boogie Episode 1 Get the Milk is part of what is going to be a multi-part game. This is just the first part. The second part should be released sometime in 2026. But this is basically a point-and-click comedy adventure game where you are trying to get milk and you encounter all these different obstacles along the way and you have to do all these hilarious types of things. The voice acting is great. The whole premise is silly. It is just a quick, fun, silly time. Poco is a free-to-play point-and-click game that is super charming. You play as a clown who basically wasn't able to do magic tricks. You get sent down into this world, and you have to help out these folks in this area of this world do different things. And so there's lots of puzzle solving. The animation is very much like early Xbox games, and it is just charming writing, charming characters, interesting puzzles to solve. Time Flies is a game where you are given a certain amount of seconds based on where you live and the average expected lifespan. And so if you live in the United States, it's 70 something seconds that you get, and you have to complete like a dozen tasks while you fly throughout this room. And it's hilarious, the types of tasks you have to do, the things you encounter, and then when you die too, it's hilarious. Strategy, tower defense games, like I said earlier in this video, are not really my thing, but hey, if you put it into a Tetris-like puzzle, then it makes it interesting and different. And so you're basically building up your base, building up your resources through doing Tetris puzzles, and basically how those different pieces interact with each other to give you those resources, give you those different powers, and how you can attack the enemies at the end of your run. And that makes it super interesting. Karimara, Beneath the Forlorn Limbs, is where you explore this environment, complete puzzles to uncover more story to find out what this house is, what happened to this lady's sister. And in a lot of ways, it feels similar to the game Grun, but this is more on a bite-sized scale, and it is creepier than that game was. In the Root Trees Are Dead, you have been tasked with exploring this family tree to uncover the murders of these 3 Root Tree sisters. And you search basically a 1990s style internet to look through that and look through periodicals and newspapers. And you also get mailed certain items about these different characters. And this family tree is massive, so there's a lot to explore, there's a lot to uncover, and there's a lot of different routes you can go down to figure out who all these people are in this family tree. Ooh, I think that's how you say it, is a puzzle platformer where you can not jump at all, but you can use bombs to propel yourself over gaps, destroy objects, and then propel yourself across gaps. So you have to think of really creative ways to blow the bombs so that you can go in the right direction and explore more of the areas in this game. Oscuro Blossoms Glow is a cool game where you are taking a light with you and you have to move it onto plants, and those plants grow vines. They activate certain objects that you'll need to get through the certain room that you're in. And basically, it's a lot of puzzle solving with that light, as well as other objects in rooms in order to get to the next area. And it makes for a very fun, light, easy experience that's very enjoyable. I'm a huge fan of logic puzzles. Is the Seat Taken does that visually, and it gives you all these instructions of all these people. They can sit here, but they don't like to sit next to smelly people. They don't like to sit next to any people at all. They want to be with this person. And so you have to figure out, based on those clues, how to configure and organize all these different people in this bus. And it is really addicting to try to figure these out, and very satisfying when you do. My Father Lied is very much like the original Myst, where it's all HyperCard, except you can move around and look around the environment a bit more than just clicking on each little area. And in those environments, you can solve little puzzles, and you're unraveling a story that happens in modern day Iraq. You are uncovering ancient mysteries in regards to Mesopotamia, as well as connections to your father. These games, I didn't know what category to put them in, but the first one, Artist Impact, is a really fantastic RPG that looks amazing, has a very unique visual style, and the way it tells stories with little, like, comic book style blocks and pencil type drawings is super interesting. The story is really great. The battle system is interesting and fun. Overall, just a complete and total vibe, and it's an RPG that's not going to take up too much of your time. Devil's Drizzle is a puzzle platformer where you are often in the dark. You have to collect little shots of lightning to light up your area, and those shots of lightning only last for a little bit, and then you have to jump quickly so that you have the light in order to get through the level. And those shots of lightning can be far and far between, so you really have to save them, and you might be jumping in the dark a lot of the time, which is interesting twists on this sort of genre. Lastly, The Drifter, which is a point-and-click game where you are trying to uncover a mystery, and there are so many twists and turns in the narrative. The puzzles are interesting to solve and make sense at the same time, and the pacing of the game is fantastic. I don't think I've played a point-and-click game that has pacing like this, where it feels like it just moves along. The narrative moves along. You don't get stuck too long on puzzles, and you can just move through the game, and it feels like a good narrative, story-driven experience. Now, I'm recording this the week of Thanksgiving, and there's a game I'm very excited about that hasn't come out yet. Due to come out December 8th, unless it's pushed back. It is called Skate Story. I played the demo of it. It's super weird. It's almost like an endless runner skate game set in a very bizarre universe. You can do all sorts of cool tricks like you would in a Tony Hawk, but your goal is to race down these strange pathways. If that had come out early in the year, probably would have been in the video because the demo was a incredible top tier experience. But for now, that's all the games that I wanted to share with you all of my gaming year of 2025. I hope you found some games that now you're going to add to your ever-growing wish list, and you check it out and support a lot of these developers, because a lot of these developers are indie developers. So I hope you do that. As you can see, I'm recording this on a different day. I have a different outfit, but I wanted to just jump in here and ask you to like, subscribe, and share with others. And then in the comments below, tell me what your favorite games of 2025 are.